Texas teenager sharing a deeply personal story tonight of dying, seeing Jesus, and then coming back to life.
First, until he got closer to me, that Jesus.
Why? But I yelled out the name of Jesus Christ. I said, Jesus! Anyway, these demons flew off, like they were blown up or something.
Death is supposed to be final, but what if it isn't? Some have slipped beyond the veil, only to return, leaving behind terrified witnesses.
Just all of a sudden, I got stabbed in my stomach.
And eerie, unanswered questions. These aren't just stories from fiction. They happened. And those who came back didn't return empty-handed.
He has a purpose. I'm sure he'll tell me.
They brought chilling messages from the other side.
And then I heard music. When I opened my eyes, I knew where I was. I knew I was in heaven.
What began as a routine checkup for Charlotte Holmes became something beyond comprehension. As her blood pressure spiked dangerously, she felt herself separate from her body, floating above the chaos of doctors scrambling to save her. But what she saw next was something else entirely. A realm filled with radiant light, the scent of heavenly flowers, and the presence of familiar, loving faces. She basked in indescribable peace until another vision shook her. A glimpse of the other side, a place of torment and sorrow. Then, just as suddenly, she was back. Fully conscious, Charlotte recovered, now devoted to sharing her experience as proof that what lies beyond is more real than we could ever imagine.
And he says, I show you this to tell you. If some of them do not change their ways, this is where they shall reside.
Buried escape.
Have it, the fear of being buried alive. And authorities say this lady lived it.
On October 16th, 2022, a couple named Young and Chae Kyung got into a dispute over some financial problems. You know the typical couple things, but things took a bizarre turn. When during a visit to their former home, Chae bound her with duct tape. But thanks to technology, Young used her Apple Watch to call 911.
Hello?
And alert her daughter and friend. Despite this, Chae took her to a forest and buried her alive. Luckily, she freed herself from the duct tape and escaped, running for 30 minutes until she found help at a nearby home. Once rescued, she told police about Chae's location, and investigators found the grave and all the proof against Chae. So they put him under the charges. Young was fully recovered and was safe with her family.
Please, no bail. I am really afraid for my life.
Frozen miracle.
In the northwest corner of Minnesota made a remarkable recovery after literally being frozen solid.
Minnesota's winter can be unforgiving, but what happened to 19-year-old Jean Hilliard defied all logic. One freezing December night, her car skidded off an icy road, leaving her unconscious in the chilling 30 degrees cold. For 6 hours, she lay frozen, her body stiff as a board, her skin like ice. When doctors finally got to her, even inserting an IV was nearly impossible. Her veins had turned to stone. They had little hope, but as a last attempt, they wrapped her in heating pads. And then, against every medical expectation, Jean woke up. No frostbite, no brain damage, just a miraculous survival that left everyone speechless.
They didn't really think I was even alive.
Against all odds.
My wife was clinically dead when they delivered my daughter.
Melanie Pritchard's story defies medical explanation. A respected activist and expectant mother, she was suddenly struck by an amniotic fluid embolism, a rare, often fatal pregnancy complication. Within moments, she was clinically gone. Doctors exhausted every option, while her family refused to accept the inevitable, clinging to prayer. And then, the impossible happened. A full day after being declared deceased, Melanie woke up. With her newborn healthy and her own life miraculously restored, she endured multiple surgeries and, within a week, was walking again. To this day, she calls her survival an act of faith, a testament to resilience, hope, and the mysteries of life itself.
You know, it's just waking up like in confusion, going, what? Wait, why am I...
the Miracle Man. From the afterlife, or so everyone thought. His grieving family had placed him on the funeral pyre, ready to say their final goodbyes. But just as the flames were about to be lit, Ramkishore's body jolted, and he sat up. Gasps filled the air as mourners recoiled in shock. Had they just witnessed a resurrection? The villagers dubbed him the Miracle Man, while doctors offered a more rational explanation. In rare cases, a person's heartbeat slows to a near undetectable level, leading to premature declarations of demise. Whatever the cause, one thing was certain. Ramkishore had quite literally cheated the Reaper. Electrifying rebirth.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
One moment, Michael Pruitt was working at a construction site. The next, 14,000 volts of electricity surged through his body, stopping his heart on the spot. The impact was so severe that he was declared clinically gone. But then, against all odds, doctors managed to restart his heart, bringing him back to life. The experience left him with a newfound outlook, one that pushed him to embrace every moment with a purpose. Some might call it luck, others a miracle. But one thing was certain: Michael had been given a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it.
All of a sudden, it sounded like a transformer blew in my backyard. So I ran outside and he was on the ground.
Buried genius.
Terry, it's where I'm going to end up, and you will too, probably.
When Angelo Hayes' motorcycle crash left him declared deceased in 1937, his fate seemed sealed, until it wasn't. Buried soon after the accident, his case took an unexpected twist when insurance investigators exhumed his body. What they found defied belief. Hayes was still alive. Turns out that on impact, Hayes went into a coma, and medical negligence declared him deceased. He survived 3 days in his coffin, but thankfully he was back among the living. Years later, he went on to design a survival coffin, capable of keeping a person alive underground for 30 hours. His story wasn't just about survival, it was about pushing boundaries. Sometimes, life's darkest moments inspire the most extraordinary ideas.
You want to dig up my son? Is this really necessary?
Morgue mayhem.
Forcing them to flee the morgue when he suddenly woke up, although he had been presumed dead.
A guy thought to be gone suddenly woke up in the morgue and caused total chaos among the staff. It felt like something straight out of a suspense movie. Mutara's wild comeback turned a grieving family's heartbreak into pure shock. He'd been declared deceased after a crazy ordeal, but waking up 20 hours later left everyone speechless. The hospital's frantic attempts to save him ended up mistakenly declaring him deceased. As Mutara recovered in his hospital bed, people were still scratching their heads over how the mix-up happened. But one thing was clear: the human spirit can bounce back in ways that are totally amazing. Miraculous encounter.
Texas teenager sharing a deeply personal story tonight of dying, seeing Jesus, and then coming back to life.
Life has a way of throwing the unexpected, and for 17-year-old Zach, that moment came in a Texas high school gym. 1 minute he was in class, the next, his heart had stopped beating. For a staggering 20 minutes, medical staff at Cook Children's Hospital prepared for the worst, placing him in a coma with little hope. But against all odds, 3 days later, Zach woke up completely unharmed. What he revealed next left everyone speechless. He recalled a divine presence, Jesus Christ, and a warm hand on his shoulder, and a line of angels. The encounter filled him with unexplainable peace. Weeks later, he returned to school, convinced he had been given a second chance, guided by something beyond comprehension.
I didn't know who it was first until he got closer to me. That Jesus.
Conscious nightmare.
All of a sudden, I got stabbed in my stomach. It was like
a routine surgery should be uneventful, right? That's what Matt Caswell thought as he prepped for a hernia operation in St. Louis. But what happened next was nothing short of a horror story. The anesthesiologist administered a paralytic agent, but forgot the knockout gas. For 13 agonizing minutes, Matt was fully aware, feeling every cut, every movement, every conversation in the operating room. He could hear the surgeons, but he couldn't scream. It was a living nightmare. After recovering, Matt wasn't about to let this go. He took the hospital to court, ensuring that no one else would endure the same terrifying ordeal.
Put in the medical records. We made a mistake. We did not turn the gas on.
Trapped, awake.
She woke up just before surgeons began making an incision, but she couldn't stop the procedure.
Donna Penner never expected a routine procedure to turn into a living nightmare. In 2008, she underwent exploratory surgery in Manitoba, Canada, but something went horribly wrong. The anesthesia failed. Instead of slipping into unconsciousness, she remained fully aware, unable to move or scream as the surgeon made the first incision. The horror of feeling every cut, every tug, and every movement while trapped in her own body was unbearable, yet no one realized she was awake. To this day, Donna battles the trauma, turning her ordeal into a mission, working with universities to ensure no one else suffers the same fate, because sometimes survival isn't just about making it through, it's about making sure it never happens again.
His words just sent a shock through my system when I heard him say, "Scalpel, please."
Against odds.
Said, 90% of people with this injury never regain consciousness.
Danielle Josie Davis knew one thing for sure. She wasn't giving up on her husband, Matt. After a devastating motorcycle accident left him in a coma, doctors advised pulling the plug, but Danielle refused. 3 months later, her faith was rewarded. Matt opened his eyes and reached for a toy motorcycle. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Yet, their battle wasn't over. Matt had lost all memory of their relationship. He didn't even recognize his wife. But Danielle, undeterred, helped him rebuild his life from scratch. Over time, Matt regained his humor, his personality, and even a new love for the woman he had unknowingly fallen for twice.
You fought for me the whole time so hard.
Yes.
Blake Hyland.
Angel. She said it doesn't matter what they say. What matters is what Blake does.
A 14-year-old gymnast had to face something really tough when he ended up in a coma for 5 weeks after a nasty accident during practice. Things started to look up when his dad leaned in to kiss him, and Blake managed to give a little kiss back. What a huge moment. The whole situation began when he fell and hit his head on the concrete while trying a new trick, which led to a serious brain sore. Doctors weren't very optimistic about his survival odds. After being transferred to a different hospital, they told his family that he had a 50-50 chance and might face lasting brain damage. But Blake surprised everyone and proved the doctors wrong. Now, at 16, he's getting ready to head back to 10th grade, even though he does deal with some memory and movement issues. Appendix surgery.
I felt my bladder, so I wet myself.
Oh, but she's a genius thing.
Fen Settle thought his appendix surgery would be a routine procedure, but in the middle of the operation, the anesthesia unexpectedly wore off, leaving him trapped in a terrifying state. Fully conscious, but completely paralyzed. He could hear the doctors feel every movement, but he couldn't scream or move to alert them. Panic surged through him as he struggled to signal his distress. Desperate, he resorted to the unthinkable, urinating on the operating table to get their attention. It worked. The medical team quickly realized their mistake and re-administered the anesthesia. Fen's story stands as a chilling reminder that sometimes, even in the most controlled environments, the body has to fight its own battles.
Response from the team?
I heard them say he's urinating.
Morgue mystery.
Never for once thought that I would be in a mortuary alive. I'm not dead.
Waking up in a morgue sounds like something out of a horror movie, but for Constantia Jr. Govender, it was her terrifying reality. The 52-year-old South African woman claimed she blacked out on her way to a friend's house, only to regain consciousness inside the Phoenix mortuary. Wrapped in a sheet, with another lifeless body beside her, she had no idea how she ended up there. Mortuary staff reportedly freed her, but here's where things take a strange turn. The hospital had no record of her ever being admitted. They insisted only 8 women had been documented that year, and she wasn't one of them. So, was this a medical mystery, or something far more sinister? What do you think? Share your thoughts down below.
I realized I'm alive because I felt that sheet over my face.
Singing surgery. A brain surgery that sounds more like a concert? That's exactly what happened when Slovenian opera singer Ambrož Bajek underwent a craniotomy. With a tumor threatening his talent, doctors needed him awake to ensure they didn't damage key areas of his brain. So, under the bright lights of the operating room, Ambrož sang his way through the procedure, accompanied by a pianist. But then, something went wrong. One misstep, like a wrong note in a melody, and his voice faltered. Fortunately, the surgeons corrected their course, and Ambrož finished his performance unscathed. A year later, he reassured the world he was still singing, proving that sometimes resilience comes in the form of a song. 17 hours gone.
Al Thomas had no brain waves for 17 and a half hours.
Velma Thomas's family had already said their goodbyes. After suffering 3 heart attacks, she was clinically gone for an unbelievable 17 hours. Doctors tried everything, but nothing worked. Eventually, the heart monitor went silent, and her loved ones were forced to let go. 10 minutes after removing life support, something impossible happened. Velma gasped for air. Her stunned son, who had already left the hospital in grief, was called back to find her fully conscious, asking for him. Specialists had no explanation, and Velma now holds a world record for the longest time deceased before coming back to life. Some miracles defy logic, proving that when the body gives up, sometimes the soul refuses to follow.
I don't know what that is, but I'm sure he'll tell me.
Alive again.
A woman was brought to them before her time.
Oh my goodness.
A 74-year-old woman from Nebraska was declared gone. Her body was prepared, transported to a funeral home, and left to rest. But 2 hours later, something chilling happened. A worker noticed movement. The woman was breathing. Frantic calls to 911 followed, and paramedics arrived to revive her. Though extremely rare, cases like these spark serious concerns about medical misdiagnoses. How many others might have been buried too soon? Authorities are now investigating whether protocols were missed. For this woman at least, fate granted her a second chance. But the unsettling question remains: how close was she to being buried alive?
A 74-year-old female brought here is now agonal breathing on the table.
Resilient awakening.
Started with a call to the Southfield Fire Department early yesterday morning.
When paramedics from the Southfield Fire Department arrived at a home, they thought they had encountered just another tragedy. A 20-year-old woman was found unresponsive, and despite every attempt to revive her, she was declared deceased. Hours later, the case took an unbelievable turn. At a funeral home in Detroit, staff made a shocking discovery. She was still breathing. A woman pronounced gone had come back to life, raising haunting questions about how close she had been to being buried alive. The mistake sent shockwaves through the community, proving that sometimes fate isn't ready to let go just yet.
So many unanswered questions about this very shocking discovery.
Coffin horror. Being buried alive for 11 days sounds like a nightmare, right? But this happened to the family of Rosangela Almeida dos Santos. After her funeral, unsettling whispers spread through her Brazilian town. Locals reported hearing strange noises from her grave, but many dismissed it as superstition. Her desperate family, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When they exhumed the coffin, What they found was horrifying. Scratch marks on the lid, signs of a struggle, and her body still disturbingly warm. Had she been buried alive? The hospital denied any wrongdoing, but rumors swirled that a tragic mistake had been made. And if that wasn't eerie enough, some questioned whether her exhumation was even real, or if something darker was at play. Journalistic drama. What happens when a journalist fakes his own demise? For Arkady Babchenko, the consequences were anything but simple. The world was stunned when news broke of his assassination in Ukraine, only for him to reappear alive at a press conference. The staged event, orchestrated by Ukrainian officials, was meant to expose a covert plot against his life. But the fallout was massive. His family, unaware of the plan, endured grief. Meanwhile, whispers of Russian involvement swirled, leading to international tensions. Babchenko found himself caught in the crossfire, labeled a traitor, facing backlash from all sides. What began as a life-saving ruse turned into a geopolitical storm that followed him long after the cameras stopped rolling. Back from the beyond. In the quiet Polish town of Ostro-Lubelski, Janina Kolkowicz's story took a turn no one saw coming. Pronounced deceased by a family doctor, paperwork was completed, and funeral arrangements were set in motion. But fate had its own script. Hours later, a mortuary worker noticed movement. Janina was breathing. The shock spread quickly as the elderly woman, who had spent 11 hours in cold storage, simply woke up, confused but unharmed. As baffled doctors scrambled for answers, Janina did something even more unexpected. She asked for a warm meal. While the world reeled at the impossible, she remained unfazed, as if returning from the other side was just another part of her day. Embalming escape.
A 32-year-old man from Kericho is recovering in hospital after morgue attendant.
Peter Kaigan's day took an unimaginable turn when a simple hospital visit nearly ended in his own embalming. The 32-year-old Kenyan man collapsed from a stomach ailment and was swiftly rushed to Kapkatet Hospital. But before anyone could process what was happening, his family was handed paperwork confirming his passing. Heartbroken, they took him to the morgue, where things took a chilling twist. Just as embalmers began their work, Kaigan let out a scream, very much alive. The stunned staff scrambled to assist him, calling it nothing short of a miracle. Days later, fully recovered, Kaigan left the hospital, proving that some departures just aren't meant to happen. Buried awakening. What if the buried ones weren't actually gone after all? And we're about to find out that, in Honduras, 16-year-old Nacy Perez's story shook an entire town. After collapsing suddenly at home, she was declared deceased and buried the next day. But her family's mourning turned to terror when faint cries echoed from her tomb. Desperate, they smashed through the cement, finding Nacy's body still warm, her fingernails bloodied from trying to escape. Rushing her to the hospital, they pleaded for a miracle, but it was too late. Though her second chance was brief, Nacy's haunting case left doctors and locals questioning everything. Because if someone can return once, who's to say they can't return again? The unexpected revival. Sometimes life surprises you, even when you think everything's wrapped up. Back in December 2021, a 66-year-old woman checked into Glen Oaks Alzheimer's Special Care Center in Iowa. By December 28th, things had taken a turn for the worse, and she was moved to hospice care because of serious brain issues. She was on quite the health roller coaster, dealing with early-onset dementia, anxiety, and some minor seizures. Then, on January 3rd at 6 a.m., after a tough 12-hour shift, the exhausted staff declared her gone. By 7:38 p.m., the funeral home got involved, and her family was informed. They zipped her into a body bag, thinking she was lifeless and all set for the next chapter. But just when you thought it was all over, at 8:26 p.m., the unexpected happened. The bag unzipped, and she gasped for air. Not exactly the send-off everyone had in mind. Unplanned resurrection. In 2023, a crematorium worker headed to the hospital to pick up the body of 90-year-old Norma da Silva. But guess what? She was still alive. Just a few hours after being declared non-responsive and sent to the morgue, Norma, who was dealing with liver problems and was out cold, surprised her friend Jessica by opening one eye during a visit. Around 1:30 a.m., the crematorium worker noticed Norma was actually warm and not stiff, like someone who had passed away should be. They quickly got her back to the hospital, and now her family is thinking about suing over this huge mix-up. Twice resurrected. Lyudmila had already been mourned once. The 61-year-old Russian woman was pronounced gone and left in a morgue for 3 days, her body resting in the freezing temperatures. Her daughter, Anastasia, arranged the funeral, believing her mother was gone forever. But when she arrived to collect the body, she was met with something impossible. Lyudmila, alive and breathing in her hospital bed. Overcome with disbelief, Anastasia canceled the funeral, stunned that her grief had turned into a miracle. But fate wasn't done testing her. Lyudmila later suffered a heart attack, once again teetering on the edge of life and demise. Twice she had been counted out, and twice she had returned. Some people, it seems, refused to stay gone. Brazilian zombie. Being trapped between life and demise isn't just a nightmare. It was reality for one Brazilian man. His story took a chilling turn when a woman visiting her family's grave heard muffled cries coming from beneath the dirt. Authorities rushed to the scene and found him, half buried, his arms clawing out of the ground, while his legs remained trapped beneath the soil. But how did he get there? Turns out, this former City Hall worker had been in a fight. He was knocked out and was left in a grave by his assailants. Thanks to the alert visitor, he was rescued just in time. Had she ignored the eerie sounds, he might have vanished without a trace. Chilling awake.
The problem is there has to be a properly signed off death certificate by a medical professional.
Waking up in a hospital bed is one thing. Waking up inside a morgue refrigerator is something else entirely. In South Africa, a man who had suffered a severe asthma attack was mistakenly declared demised. With no further checks, his body was placed in the refrigerated section of the morgue. Hours later, muffled cries sent shivers down the spine of staff members. The moment they opened the chamber, they were met with an eerie sight. He was alive. This grave error served as a chilling reminder of just how fragile the line between life and demise can be.
Obviously, that didn't happen in the circumstances, and I think we need to find out why.
Prem Chand.
Yeah, after the complaint for chest pain.
Prem Chand's journey from the brink of demise to an unexpected awakening wasn't just a medical mystery. It became a fight for justice. After being rushed to Berbice Hospital with a rare heart condition, his family was given devastating news. He didn't make it. 3 hours later, his body was zipped into a bag and prepared for the morgue. But then, something no one expected. A doctor noticed movement. Prem Chand was alive. What should have been a second chance turned into a nightmare. People believed he was a ghost, and he was denied proper care. Now, he wasn't just searching for answers. He was demanding accountability.
They only knew you were still alive in the morgue.
Breath of life. In a wild turn of events in Mahalingpur, India, Shankar Shanmukh Gambi found himself in a private hospital in Belagavi. Doctors told his family that he wouldn't survive without life support, so they decided to transfer him to a government hospital. Not long after, Shankar was declared gone. But hold up, it gets wilder. When the docs came in for the post-mortem, Shankar hadn't arrived yet. The ambulance finally showed up, and guess what? Shankar was actually breathing. He was alive. A crowd of about 2,000 thought a celebrity had rolled in, but nope. It was just Shankar making a grand entrance. The doctors had to clear up the mix-up about the first hospital being totally off. Sometimes, life really knows how to throw a curveball. Revival. Valdelucio Goncalves' family had come to terms with their loss. The 54-year-old man from Brazil was declared lifeless by doctors, with all the necessary paperwork citing respiratory failure. Funeral arrangements were made, and his brother stepped in to dress him for his final farewell. But as he unzipped the body bag, the unthinkable happened. Valdelucio moved. Not a hallucination, not a trick of the light. He was breathing. Panic turned into chaos as he was rushed back to the ICU, covered in cotton wool and death certificates. He survived, but one question lingered. How close had he come to being buried alive? Lost and found. When Miguel Angel Gomar de Luna vanished from his nursing home, his family feared the worst. Months of searching led to the discovery of a decomposed body that matched his description. Though his daughter hesitated, authorities pressured her to confirm the identity. With no better options, she signed the papers, and Miguel was officially cremated. Or so they thought. 2 months later, a phone call shattered their grief. Miguel was alive. He had been living on the streets, lost in a haze of alcohol and adventure. Now, his family faced an impossible situation. How do you welcome back someone who, on paper, no longer exists? Second chance. Brighton. Damazanthi's family had accepted the inevitable. After a long illness, he was wrapped in blankets and laid in a coffin, surrounded by mourners paying their final respects. But the next day, something happened that no one expected. His legs twitched. At first, they thought it was a trick of the light. Then, he moved again. His boss was the first to sound the alarm, and within minutes, disbelief turned into sheer chaos. Xanthi was alive. Rushed back to the hospital, he spent 2 days on life support before regaining consciousness. His memories of the experience were faint, but one thing was clear. He had been given a second chance. Not over yet. They say it ain't over till it's over, and Bella Montoya's story proved it. Bella Montoya's funeral was meant to be her final farewell. After suffering a stroke, doctors in Ecuador declared her lifeless, and her family moved forward with the arrangements. But 5 hours into the wake, a sound sent chills through the mourners. A muffled knock. Then another. As panic spread, they opened the coffin to a sight that defied all logic. Bella was breathing. A video captured the moment she gasped for air, her mouth moving, her body weak but alive. Rushed back to the hospital, she remained in ICU as authorities scrambled for answers. How had they gotten it so wrong? Frozen fate. For Shrikesh Kumar, death wasn't the final chapter. It was just a chilling pause. After a devastating road accident in India, doctors declared him lifeless, showing no vital signs. With no second guesses, he was moved to the hospital morgue, sealed inside a freezer for over 24 hours. The story should have ended there, but fate had other plans. When his family arrived to complete the formalities, a shocking realization sent shivers down their spines. Shrikesh was still breathing. Instantly rushed to intensive care, he slipped into a coma, but made a full recovery within days. While authorities launched an investigation into the baffling medical error, some couldn't help but wonder, was this science's mistake or something beyond explanation? Buried but not gone. In 1915, Essie Dunbar was declared lifeless after an epileptic seizure. A funeral was swiftly arranged, and she was buried. But fate had other plans. When her sister arrived late and insisted on seeing her one last time, the coffin was unearthed. To everyone's horror, Essie sat up, alive and smiling. The preachers conducting the service were so terrified they tumbled into the grave, and even her own family believed she had returned as a ghost. Defying all odds, Essie lived another 47 years, becoming a legend of the living dead. Now it's time for today's open discussion.
Why? But I yelled out the name of Jesus Christ. I said, Jesus! Anyway, these demons flew off, like they were blown up or something.
For years, Mike O'Brien's life spiraled through addiction, crime, and incarceration. But one night, inside a dimly lit motel room, everything changed. As he succumbed to a heavy dose, his body went still, but his mind ventured somewhere far worse. He claimed to have found himself in a dark, fiery abyss where towering demons seized him. The terror was overwhelming until he cried out for divine help. In that instant, an unseen force pulled him back. He woke up, gasping for air, his body unmoved for 10 whole minutes. That night marked his transformation. Now a pastor, he shares his story as living proof that even at the gates of hell, redemption is possible. Thank you very much for watching the video. Do like and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming amazing videos. Thank you once again.